Hi, I'm Suki.
And I'm Claire.
Welcome to Getting Psychic, where you can listen to us use ourselves to test the theory that anyone can get psychic. Hi, it's Suki. Claire is still on the road after her amazing wedding, so I'm here with another mind-blowing interview with my friend, Tamara Andrews Pasick. Tamara is an intuitive psychic medium with super strong clairvoyant gifts. Hi, Tamara.
Hey, how are you today?
Amazing.
I'm so excited to be here.
Welcome to Getting Psychic.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. It's my favorite podcast. It's my favorite.
Now you're on the other side. Okay, so Tamara, do you believe that anyone can be psychic?
Oh my gosh, I think everyone is psychic. Not that they can be, they already are. It's just a matter of have they recognized it yet? Oh, it's a surprise. You have it.
Okay, as you know, because you actually listen to this podcast, everyone that we interview says that. And I wonder how it must feel to our listeners to hear that. I'm sure everyone hears it and thinks immediately, well, where is it?
Yeah. That's a very good point. That's probably what most of the people are saying. Where is it? If I have it, why can't I see it? And I think people expect to have this grandiose visions or literally hearing someone appear in front of them or talking to them. And that's not always what psychic is about. That's part of it. That's the clairvoyant part, seeing things. But there are equally as many people out there that feel things. Just as simple as, hey, you walk in a room and you get a bad vibe, or you are talking to somebody and you think, yeah, I just don't like this person. Or you talk to someone else and you think, oh my God, I love this person. I want to be around them. So that's feeling. You're not seeing anything, but that is psychic. That's 100% psychic. You can feel things,
Yeah.
you can see things, you can hear things. There's so many different ways that we process them. We all speak psychic in different languages.
I like that. So, what clairs do you have?
My two strongest are clairvoyance and clairaudience. I see things clearly. I get visions, and once I soften into them, then they just tell me a story. Typically, it follows up with clairvoyance as well. And I have learned, and this is again, you don't immediately become such a great psychic person the minute you discover you have abilities. You do have to practice them. It's 100% important, and it's how you get better. And it's just that way with anything, whether it's psychic or running, regardless. Yeah, clairvoyance first, clair audience second, and then the two will intermingle, and it becomes a nice communion because I've got both of them working for me. Don't always have all the others, but I do utilize the others, just not to the extent the first two.
Yeah, you basically go into the IMAX theater of psychic.
That's it exactly. It is. It's
Tamara's
funny.
Tamara's got surround sound and
It's
vision.
funny. It just the visions come to me, and a little play or a short movie plays out, and I ask questions, and then I get all the information. That's exactly how it works.
Okay, so you use the words soften into. Please elaborate on what that means to you.
Soften into that. Okay, softening into. I would say so often when we're trying anything in the physical form, we're working harder. We're using our muscles. We're leaning in to hear. It's almost the opposite, I think, when you are elevating your psychic abilities. Yes, you do have to practice them. Yes, you do have to try, but it's not in the way that we do in our physical bodies. It's taking a deep breath, it's relaxing. It's closing your eyes or all the way or closing your eyes and softening them so that you see a little bit more than the clarity of, say, for an example, a flower. It's softening all of your senses because when you soften them, when you lighten them, when you don't lean into 100% of hearing and you quiet your mind, that's when that's when information starts coming through. So think of it as lightening Softening, obviously, is another word, but it's where you need to be in a relaxed state and hear things that you're not normally hearing, see things that you're not normally seeing. It's it's again a skill set, and you do have to practice that as well.
Okay. I keep hearing that what you're really doing is opening yourself to receiving.
Yes, that's definitely 100% part of it. But receiving also has another side to it, and that is the asking part. There are so many things available to us in the psychic realm, in the angelic realm, in the animal world. It is often as easy as asking for it. So the receiving also has to do with I want to ask so that I can receive that. I want to ask for that energy. I want to ask to see someone. I want to ask to hear someone. I want to ask to feel someone. So receiving is not necessarily a passive activity.
Okay. So it's kind of a balance of active and passive.
It is a balance of that. It's not just, they're not mutually exclusive.
All right. I want to dig in more later into how to ask, but I want to get some Tamara early years stuff.
Early years, oh my gosh.
Tamara, the early years.
Chapter 1.
Yes. Chapter 1, Tamara Andrews Pasick. First psychic or non 3D experience. Can you describe your first psychic or non 3D experience?
That's challenging because I think, like most people, so much of those experiences I thought were normal and happened to everyone. My first psychic experiences happened in the woods. I was fortunate to have incredible teachers, and one of them was nature and spending time there. The very probably the first large memorable one, I was playing in the woods, and we were always trying to make forts and little rooms and teepees and things out of branches, and I came upon an absolutely perfectly made treehouse. And there was a woman in there, and there was a rabbit in there, and it was absolutely fabulous. And I was running to scream to my siblings, "Hey, you got to come see this! You got to come see this!" And they're saying, "No, we got to go. It's time for lunch, whatever." And I went back the next day to find it, and it was gone. And it wasn't till many years later that I understood that that was only being shown to me. It was the elementals showing themselves and introducing themselves to me. So that would be my first one, and I would imagine that was around age 5.
That's amazing.
So many more since then. As a lot of people do, they'll take a step back in the teenage years and young adult years. But after I had my first child, I was up in the middle of the night feeding him, and I was almost asleep because that's what new moms do. They're craving sleep. And all of a sudden, I turn my head and I go, "Oh my gosh, what are you doing here, Grandpa?" And I was in such a dream state. I literally saw my grandfather standing in the doorway, standing in a tween place as spirits do. And he looked at me and he nodded his head, and he had just come in to see my first baby. And that was really exciting.
That's amazing. Okay, so I do know that you grew up in a large family. And in fact, one of your siblings is a very noteworthy author in the genre of spirituality.
Yes. Yes.
Your brother's name is Ted Andrews. We've referenced many of his books on this podcast, and in fact, I highly recommend any of them to anyone who's listening. Was interdimensional access a normal occurrence in your household growing up?
I'm not sure you would call it normal, particularly if you asked some of my other brothers about that particular one. Ted, he was always drawn to nature and spirit. And the thing about him, I think people may know him, they may not, and I'm not even sure that makes a difference. He had the same abilities that everybody in my family has. His manifested through books and speaking and teaching. This was back in the 80s. This was not when there was a lot of information out there about things like meditating or elementals or spirits.
And you had how many siblings?
I have 6 siblings, 5 older brothers and 1 younger sister.
And did you all exhibit psychic abilities without trying?
Everyone definitely everyone definitely exhibited psychic abilities. Again, I think it's a matter of at the time when we were children, we thought that was normal. We thought it was not a noteworthy thing because it happened to us all very much. Several people in my family got away from it, but there are some incredibly strong psychic people in my family. I think it's quite amazing, actually, to have so many in one group. So that's quite exciting. And we're now finally, years and years on, able to talk about it amongst ourselves.
What about your parents?
So my parents, I would say my father not psychic, or at least he never lent into that. My mother, most definitely, she could read a person. She could figure out a person in a second from meeting
Yeah.
them. If they were good, if they needed something, if they needed help, if they wanted something, if they were spiritual, she could figure it out. She was lightning fast. And I just recently had a conversation with her. She's 94, and she told me that she used to go out in the woods with her dad. That was the grandpa that visited me with my baby, and he lived with us. But she used to go out to the woods with her dad to pick plants to make tinctures and teas out of to help her sister, who was quite a poorly child. She was ill quite a bit. So you can see where that lineage comes through from my grandfather through my mom, and then obviously to us children. So that was quite exciting to learn that. Yeah, I'm older now, and learning that my mom was out with my grandpa picking plants that were going to heal people is a pretty exciting thing. And I asked if she remembered any of it or could tell me about it, and she couldn't, of course. But I'm thinking, oh goodness, I don't want that knowledge to just leave when she leaves. And that was very
Yeah,
exciting.
that's incredible. What was it like on your own path to have someone in your own immediate family who was such a prolific writer on the subject? Did you rely on him or did you try to pursue your own path completely independently? Was your dinner conversation like about
Never, absolutely not ever. In
really?
fact, there was a lot of, as siblings do when they're younger, making fun of my brother. There was a lot of that went on, and no, it wasn't a normal topic of discussion because back at that time in the 70s, 80s, you didn't sit around the table and talk about spiritualism and say, "Oh, what kind of spirit did you see today?" or "What kind of information did you get from this plant today?" It wasn't a normal part of conversation because people didn't talk about it. I think part of that is the time. It was that time
Mhm.
frame. But I think the other part is for everyone in my family, at least, I believe it was a normal part of growing up. So it didn't seem unique and different. It just seemed regular.
Well, until you went out of your house, I would imagine, because in the same breath, we're saying it wasn't widely accepted. So, I mean, I personally struggle with the communication boundaries today. I am always finding myself stumbling into conversations where I want to take half of the things that I said back because people can't handle it. How do you navigate that? Do you just keep it in your pocket?
Not as much as I used to. I think that the realization coming outside of the house and realizing that not everybody sees and hears and feels and does these things on a regular basis, it was quite an astounding observation and thing to learn at the time. So you became quiet about it, and you did. I truly think in the past 20 years, things have changed so much, but most frequently in the past 5 to 10 years, where you don't always have to measure or control what you're going to say as much, not knowing where the other person sits. It's so much easier now, but yeah, even today, about is it any different from 20, 30, 40 years ago? It is different, and I think it's massively different. But I do think you have to me- to measure who you're speaking with. We're always going to come across those people, but that's part of your ability to have your psychic sense, to develop that sense is to know, hey, I can talk to this person, I can't talk to this other one.
Have you made any errors in that department that
I make errors all the time. Absolutely. When you're talking to somebody and you can see them glaze over and they start to look for the nearest exit. Yeah, I still make those mistakes, but not as many as I used to.
Oh my God. I just did it like at Claire's wedding.
After everyone had been saged.
Oh, Lord. Okay. So, how did you, well, I guess you kind of touched on this, but what was the point where you decided, I know that you took a pause through your teenage years, which I think is common because we all want to assimilate and be as much like everybody else as possible. At what point did you start to decide that you wanted to work on developing your skills, and what was your first step?
I think it was shortly after I had my first child and my grandfather appeared. I was fortunate enough to live in a neighborhood where I had another friend who was very much into spirituality, and that was a compelling factor. She was so much farther along than I was at that point, but it was a compelling factor. Things really changed when I moved to England. And the reason they changed is it brought back all of my memories of working with, seeing, feeling, playing with elementals, the elemental kingdom. Things are much clearer and much more accessible in England, Ireland, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales. It's just by the nature of the elemental kingdom there. It was so much easier to connect with them, and would appear out of nowhere, and I would see fairies everywhere, and it was just 100%. That move to England, the different energies of that land, the strong elemental force there, major directional change for me.
That's awesome. So, as you were saying that, a red-headed woodpecker showed up right in front of me because I sit on the second floor and look out at a tree. And just thought I'd share because
That's
I do think this always happens as I'm recording. Like some crazy birds will just show up that I never see.
Yeah. So this is where I want to grab my feathered friends cards or book and figure out what's a woodpecker mean. They're harbingers of something, no doubt.
Okay, so moving forward, I know that humor is very important to you. And I wanted to kind of talk about where you think it has a place in spirituality. And then I kind of want to ask you about the other side.
Okay, well, for me, I like to laugh. I just like to have a good laugh. And I think things are funny, and I think it puts you in that state where you can soften, which we spoke of earlier. So many people for so long felt that spirituality had to be so serious, and you have to be listening to music and have incense on and all of these things, which are all very important. I'm not saying we don't have to do those. I utilize all of them. But nature and humans are funny. It's what we have a sense of humor. Name anything else out in the entire universe that has a sense of humor that we can literally lighten ourselves by laughing. So I feel strongly that spiritualism and humor do not have to be on two separate planets. They can reside in one. We can all have a laugh about things, and that raises our vibration when we laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are wonderful stories to share that are spiritual. And if you tell somebody, they'll fall off their chair laughing because it's going to sound like the stupidest thing they've ever heard. But having that ability to laugh and lighten yourself and change your energy makes it like one of the biggest tools you can actually use to work with spiritualism.
Totally.
I love it.
Yeah, totally. And I that's definitely probably the main thing that we connected on when we met. It was just like
I I I instantly fell in love with you when one of the first things you said to me about a photo. And I was standing by one of these large rocks at a stone circle in England, and you said, "Why are you posting a picture of yourself with a rock stuck up your butt?" and and I realized at that point that I was really, really gonna like you.
Oh God. Well, yeah, like to clarify, it was your WhatsApp image and you were standing with your eyes closed, like really intimately with this rock. And I thought it was so funny. And I was just so curious about who you were going to be. And then we just laughed for days. But I think,
Well, for the record, my eyes weren't closed. I just have super squinty eyes, and I every time I get a picture taken, people say, "Open your eyes." My eyes are open. They just don't open any
oh my
farther.
God, yeah,
So yes, it looked like I was
they're
sleeping with
wide
you.
open. Um, but it is funny because sometimes we'll be talking about, in terms of the spiritual stuff, one, our guides definitely have a sense of humor. And once you start communicating with them, I think you'll recognize that. And two, there are so many times when we're communicating with our manifestor group buddies and just the safety of communicating with a group of people where you know you can say anything about your psychic development and the experiences that you're going through is a wonderful thing, and I hope that everyone can have that. But then you always have the opportunity to look back and crack up at the crazy shit that you're saying.
It's it is such a big part. It is so it's it just lightens everything. It's just so funny. And we need to go back to small groups at one point, because having a small group to work with, like you said, that you can trust and that you can have a laugh with and you can share your experiences, however incredible they are or however pathetic they are, and still be able to talk about it and have a support group is so important. But I do love the humor aspect. I too have guides that they joke with me oftentimes when I'm doing readings. I will start laughing because my guides are showing me stuff in a way for me to understand it. So they may show me something, as an example, a red barn, and that red barn means something to me. A red barn to me means I'm going to be sneezing my head off because I'm allergic to hay. A red barn to you might mean, oh, my horses are there. I love horses and animals. So when I get it, those messages, my guides often will show it to me with humor, and then I will know exactly what they're talking about. And how cool is it to have spirit guides to make you
Okay,
laugh?
so
I think
wait,
that's awesome.
explain then what you mean when you say they show it to me with humor. What's an example?
All right, let me think for a second. I don't remember all my readings.
Of
That's
course
one
not.
of my wonderful things that I love about it. But let me think here. I got to think for a second. So, as an example, I will be doing a reading for someone and they've had a repetitive problem that they can't get past. My guides will show me, almost like a cartoon, somebody running into a brick wall or running into a fence, and then they get, they go struggling backwards and they fall on the ground. Well, for me, that's slapstick comedy, classic cartoons that I grew up with, and that would make me laugh. But I also know, well, if they're showing me somebody running into a wall and falling back, they've obviously tried this 100 times, and this path is not working for them. So my interpretation of it is, first, to have a laugh because it's funny, this vision, and second, my interpretation of it is, you've done this 100 times because that's the kind of cartoons that I would have watched. It happened 100 times. Now you've got to try a different way.
Take a new approach.
So,
Yeah,
yeah. So they show me things that I can interpret in my eye and discern a message from.
that's cool. Okay, so I was listening to this Caroline Myss book, Anatomy of the Spirit, and it's very profound and she's very intense. But I love that about her. She's not making jokes, right? And when I was listening yesterday, she was talking about, oh God, she said something that made me cringe, but about you can't have a yuppie spirituality. You can't have a convenient spirituality. And I was like, oh shit. um, but she was then talking about, in order to get through from your lower chakra stuff to the higher chakras, a dark night of the soul will occur and it's unavoidable. And kind of addressing the duality of the higher and lower vibrations, and sort of the essence being the brighter your light shines, the more potentially vulnerable one might be to resistance. Can you speak about that at all?
Honestly, this is just, I'm just thinking about this now. I think it's different for everybody. I think it's hard to make blanket statements about anything with spirituality because it is so unique to everyone. Many people probably do have a moment where are so grounded and they're going up into, like you said, into the higher chakras, the higher energy, the faster frequency, and going between those two phases can be very challenging and tiring. Some people may have a massive aha moment. Some people may just flow into it seamlessly. We're not all the same. I just don't. I'm not certain that you can make feel that this is going to be the same way for everyone. You've met a lot of different people. We've all met a lot of different people where it's just soft, ooey gooey, soft, beautiful, loving beings, and they may have a really hard time making that jump. But there's others that might just flow into it. I'm grounded. I'm up in space. I can do it all. I think the ones that probably have that big dichotomy, that big difference, are ones who have forgotten about their natural abilities for quite some time. And it just kind of like, boom, slaps them in the face. And they're jolted out of that 3D reality going, oh my goodness, I forgot about all this, or I remembered this, or I can't believe I can do this, or this is wonderful. But it can happen to anybody anyway. It was subtle for me and it was long, it was over a long period of time. Some people it's really fast. Some people it's a hard transition, some people it's an easy.
So, what I was kind of trying to approach was, even though, say, we started out this podcast in an attempt to talk about psychic stuff and have fun and be laid back and not too self-serious, we still managed to be forced to look inward in a way that maybe was unexpected. And from what I have heard, from what I have witnessed watching my friends, you included, on their psychic journeys and the things that unfold because of it, it can actually be really intense. What I got this, I have to just say this really quick. I got this feedback from a friend of Robert's in Los Angeles this week, and he said he was asking about a book of chakras to recommend. And so I made the recommendation, and I said, also there's the chakra series on the podcast if you want kind of a laid back explorative approach. There's tons of, books referenced as well. And he said, well, I heard a clip of your podcast and I got kind of freaked out to listen to it because it seemed like you both sort of opened a Pandora's box. And I'm really happy right now. And I was like, oh, wow. Yeah. I totally understand the desire to not want to shake things up when you're at peace. But in response, I was like, well, I'm happier than I've ever been in my life. And this is, I think, part of it. So don't be afraid. It's not going to shake you up too much, but maybe for some people, that's really what happens.
Well, two things. Yes, the podcast and Pandora's box and him looking to get a book on chakras, it can all open a Pandora's box. I think once we start into something, we don't know about it yet. We don't know what we don't know. That's the clearest thing. Your ability to learn that yourself and still share that with other people and with fun is what makes it so effective, because learning can be just incredibly fun if you wanted to. But going further from that, if you, as you change, as you lighten your human body, as you raise your frequency, there's so many terms for it, you're going to shine a little brighter. You're going to be happier. You're happier doing your podcast and where you are in life. I am too. That draws in a lot of things, a lot of people, a lot of opinions, a lot of entities, a lot of energies, some of them good and some of them not so good. It definitely opens you up for a lot, and not having full knowledge of it yet, I think opens you up even more and makes you more vulnerable. Will everyone have a bad experience? No, absolutely not. But if you do have an experience where you are feeling some dark energy or an attack, or what you're learning isn't resonating appropriately, those are learning opportunities as well. It means you're on the right path, most certainly, but there's a little bit more work you have to do to protect yourself. So I think anyone on any journey, be it a spiritual journey, learning how to do something like a podcast, learning to jump rope, there are going to be mistakes, but those mistakes, like everything in life, are your opportunities to really learn. We don't learn by doing everything right, we learn by making mistakes. So when you have instances that happen that are challenging, a dream, an appearance, a dark energy, maybe fatigue for a week, those are opportunities to say, hey, I got something here I can learn. How can I go figure out what that is?
Yeah. Thank you for that. Why would anyone in their right mind choose to pursue this? Why would anyone choose to pursue getting psychic or becoming psychic when they're just plugging away and life is working just
That
fine?
is a very evocative question, and I'm not certain there's one answer for it, but these are my thoughts. I think there is a much bigger plan than we understand. And sometimes that plan is, we're going to present you with some opportunities to recognize your abilities and see how things expand outside of our 3D world on Earth here. And some people are going to be excited about that. Just like if you offer somebody a chocolate ice cream or vanilla, part of the room's going to get real excited about the chocolate, and the other part are going to say, nah, I don't want that. So it's a bigger plan out there than we're aware of, but we always have a choice. We have a choice. We can say, yeah, that looks like fun, but nah, I'm not going to do that right now. Ooh, I saw those spirits. I felt that energy. Yeah, I don't think I want to do that right now. Or your choice might be, that's different. I'm just going to experiment a little bit. And it's like anything, picking up a new hobby, for lack of a better word. But the vibrancy of it, I think, draws people in for the pure and only reason that it is energetic and we feel things. Some people might be strong enough to say, nope, don't want that, or no, I don't want that right now. But there's going to be a difference along the way. Everybody's got a choice. And that choice is going to be presented to you many times in your life.
Yeah. All right. What is the Akasha and how did you learn how to access it?
So, spiritual path, moved to England, things really started opening up for me there. Ended up coming back to the States about 15 years later. Did not want to come back. and I was moving to another new city. I've lived a lot of different places in my life and wanted to meet people. So my thought was, well, let me go check out some spiritual places and see if I can meet some people that way. And I did. I found an incredible place, one of the Chicago suburbs called the Gathering Lighthouse, that offered so many different kind of classes and courses on everything. And I just started taking them, just partially to meet people, partially to see what I was interested in, partially to see what resonated and I might be good at. And Akashic record reading was a class that I took that I just was naturally good at it. And I loved it. But I did not like the methodology of how it was taught and the constructs of how we had to work with the Akasha, which is basically an energetic library of all information of all of your souls of everyone in the universe. And we can go in and check a book out and learn what we want. Didn't like that methodology. Didn't really practice much. A couple years later, I took a same class, but from a different instructor, and I loved her. And she literally opened a pathway to me for the past 9 years that has been incredible. When things really took a turn for the second time, though, was when I went to a plant medicine retreat in Costa Rica and met some incredible people, you being one of them. But I came across Vera, who I believe has been a guest on your show, and I love her. And she had traveled the same path with the Akashic record readings as I did, but she was starting to do something in a whole new way. She was, I don't know, she was very pragmatic about how she did it, but it made sense to me. And it was something about the confluence of us meeting in Costa Rica, where we were with our readings. And I was able to learn so much from her. And at that point in Costa Rica on, my Akashic record readings changed. They changed dramatically. So, do I still work with the Akashic Records? Absolutely. It's an incredible place to get information for people, for the earth, for anything. I love it. I access it differently than I ever did, but something has happened in our worlds here in the past, I guess, year and a half, where I'm no longer getting what we typically call human past lives. I will get human past lives if that's the only thing that my client wants to look at. But for the most part, I'm being shown interdimensional, angelic, elemental, extraterrestrial lives that might be concurrent with their life now. In other words, something that they are doing during the sleeping plane, during their astral travel, during a lucid dreaming state. When I find out this information, they will often reference past lives, tools that they've learned in past lives that have brought them to this. It's very challenging to talk about having concurrent lives. We think of things as we're alive right now, we're on this planet, and in 12 hours it'll be midnight, and that's how it works. But in reality, you can be different people or different aspects of yourself at the same time. And I think it would be hard to deny that just by the mere fact that we dream. The fact that you're dreaming and you feel like you're running through a field of flowers, but you're actually sleeping, is a very clear observatory point to say, hey, I can do two different things at once. I can be running through a field and I can be sleeping. So that's what my readings are about. They're about finding other aspects of your soul and what that soul's doing. And most recently, the information that I'm getting is aspects of yourself, of how you are helping the universe, the earth, the people on the earth change for the better right now. So we're all have
Yeah.
little jobs and roles we're doing, and it's so exciting because not one reading is ever the same.
Mm-hmm.
And not any information coming through isn't anything more than humbling, joyful, informative. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah. I can say from my experience with some quick readings that we've done, that you've done recently, it's been wild. very expansive information that I, haven't stopped thinking about. It's really
It, it,
magical.
it is magical. And I feel so fortunate to be able to be given this information to share. It's it's taught me a lot about my abilities, but more importantly, it's taught me a lot about what else is out there in the world, what other people are doing. We have ideas of things. Yes, we have spirits, we have angels, we have teachers, but there's so many other things out there that we don't even know about it. And I am fortunate enough to get a snapshot of it every time I do a reading. And it is the most precious gift. It's incredible.
Yeah. So cool. Okay. So I know you as an extremely generous and giving person. And I know that for some time you did readings for free with the stipulation that your subject do something kind for someone else. Can you speak about what you think is important about this practice?
I can indeed. I never really wanted to start a business, and for so long I thought if you were spiritual, you had to do some. You had to open a Reiki studio, or teach yoga, or charge for your services, whatever. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's important. You have to have an exchange of energy. But for a long time, my exchange of energy was having someone do a random act of kindness after our reading. And the purpose of that is that they are receiving something from the universe and with my assistance. But if we put something good back into the universe, the world, the civilization, humans, the earth, anything, it raises the vibration of that. It puts that good out there. There's a mantra, not a mantra even. It's a theory that I live by, and it's called the butterfly effect. And I know many people have heard of it. You don't have to do a grand, huge, large act of any type to change the world. You can just affect one person in a small way, in a small moment in time, and it can have the largest effect on things that you cannot even imagine. So that's why I do it. I think it's an incredibly kind thing to do, and those small acts of kindness end up making massive shifts in the energy.
Yeah. Well, I hope that inspires a lot of people to do something random and kind for another person today.
Yeah, I hope so too. That's actually something I learned from my mom who recently passed. She one of the things that she always taught me was that if you're feeling really rough or you're upset or you're angry, that you should do something for someone else. And the whole purpose behind that was to take your mind off of your own troubles, but opening up the door for good things to happen to other people. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally. Don't forget animals.
And animals
They
too.
count too.
Yes, they do. We love our animals.
I didn't want to exclude them. Okay, so when you receive messages, what form do they come in? Can you try to describe in detail the different ways in which you receive information?
Yes, that's an excellent question. I receive information visually first. I am shown. I close my eyes, and it's like a movie running in front of me. And sometimes it starts a little slow, sometimes it starts fast, but it's images. It's a moving film, for lack of a better word. At another point, I will start to get verbal information. And then I jump in and I have exchanges, verbal exchanges, nonverbal exchanges. They're in my mind's eye, and my mind. And I'll ask yes and no questions. And anyone can do this if they want to just practice the most basic skill in the world. Just ask a yes or no question. Is it going to rain today? Am I going to have a good day today? Anything. Where's my shoe? Is my shoe in the closet? And just ask for a yes or no. And the very first thing that pops in your head, that's the answer. So I get my visuals, I get my audio messages, I interchange with them, I interact with them with a yes or no question, and that's how I get my information. The more questions you ask, the more succinct you can. I can actually get down to the specific year that people had past lives, and it's just through a series of yes and no questions.
And so you actually audibly hear yes and no, or is it more of a
Sometimes I will
experience?
audibly hear. Mostly I hear it in my head. So I will say, was this life in the 1600s? Was it in the 1500s? Was it in the 1800s? And I'll get a yes or no. And then I narrow it down. And it's again a skill, but it's such an easy skill. Anybody can practice it any point, anytime, any day.
Okay, so how did you get from sort of that first experience in the woods to seeing a film when you close your eyes?
I think that started to happen. Well, it started to happen about 9 years ago when I first started doing readings.
Okay.
It has, as with anything, and when you're learning a new language, you get better when you practice it and it becomes more fluent.
Well, let's back up a little bit. You wouldn't have started doing readings if you weren't already receiving information.
Correct.
So,
Correct. Taking this Akashic record class, though, was the purpose of this class, besides learning how to do it, was more importantly learning the ability of what I can see and how to translate that information. So that's what this particular class did for me, is to show you, hey, this is a very easy way and method for you to do it. That's why I encourage everyone to take every class that they can. You don't have to be a professional, you don't have to be the best student in the class, but that's how you figure out what are your natural talents. And for me, being
yeah.
able to see things was natural. And I didn't even realize how natural it was till I took notice of it. And I took notice of it from taking a class, Akashic Records.
Who was your teacher for the class that really expanded
Her name is
your skills?
Pruitt. She is an incredible instructor. Left a job, an educational job with businesses, and decided to do this full time. And her ability to teach is incredible. She is online. She does a
So
lot of
cool.
things online still, but by far one of my best teachers. I was just very fortunate to have incredible teachers in my life.
That's wonderful. Okay. You want to touch on the ethics of translating messages from spirit?
uh, okay. I'll give you my opinion. So, my opinion is, as with anything, when you're talking to someone and engaging in communication, you have to figure out what's the best way to communicate with a person. I think for anyone that's doing any kind of mediumship or readings, they should have a basic course or a basic knowledge in how to communicate properly with people, in terms of giving them information in the right method at the right time that they can understand and take in. I think that's very important. I think for the most part, that is everyone's intent out there. I'm not certain that that always comes through. So if you are in a position where you're receiving information that you're not particularly comfortable with, or you don't think has been delivered appropriately, probably not a good place to get your information. I think that there are times we are shown things that, as a reader, I have to figure out, how do I translate this information into a way that's not going to shock them or make them uncomfortable. It's an incredibly important part of this. And I think most 99.9% of the readers and psychic mediums out there are very, very good at it. I just think that everyone should just have a basic course in how to communicate things, and how to communicate them with discern, so that you're not giving too much to make people
Yeah.
uncomfortable.
Kind of like a
Yeah,
counseling
yeah,
course.
exactly.
Like there's a huge amount of ethics that need to be involved.
An incredible amount of ethics, because we are still human. We're getting information in a different way, but we are still human, and we have to process that information, and we have to live it, and we have to be able to carry on with our day or our week or our month. So the ethical part of it is immensely important.
What happens when someone gives you a reading and something that they say really doesn't resonate with you?
That happens a lot. That happens to me. It happens to people I read oftentimes as well. That doesn't mean that that information is not incredibly important or accurate. It just means that you don't understand it yet because that timing for you to understand it hasn't arrived yet. So you're getting that information now, it's planting the seed, and a year or 6 months or 2 months from now, you're going to go, oh my gosh, I forgot about that. They did say that, and here it is. You couldn't make the connections because you couldn't see when it would be applicable. So oftentimes the information that people get, even though they're kind of like, oh, I don't know about that, or that's kind of, I'm not sure, it's because the timing for that information has not come to fruition.
Yeah. Even though you are the most badass psychic I know, what are your current goals on your journey?
Ooh, current goals. So my journey is being shown to me a little bit at a time. There's a whole history of where my journey's going, and it has a lot to do with stone circles and working with interdimensional beings. So I want to carry on doing readings because I think right now people need to hear where we're going and what's happening and what their role is. So many people are like, what's my purpose? What's my purpose? I can't tell you all of your purposes in life, but I would like to be able to share one with you if I can. So I have, after a lot of thought, put together a company called corspiritusanima, which is Latin for heart, spirit, soul. Because I'm going in and I'm reading your soul, and I'm doing it with my heart, and it's important. So I have started that business. I do readings. They are usually 45 minutes to an hour. You'll have one life, typically other aspects of that life coming through. So my immediate goal is to carry on doing readings and carry on with my path of working with stone circles.
That's awesome. Um, Also, I'll leave the information for obtaining a reading with Tamara. I'll leave the information so that people can book a reading with you. I highly recommend it. It's an incredible experience. Now, please tell us more about the stone circles.
Okay, this all goes back to living in England, and at the time I raised my children there, so there wasn't a lot of time. If any of your listeners have children, you know what I mean. However, a couple of my kids stayed in England after we left, and they now live in what's called the Peak District, which is like the upper Midlands of England. England's a very long country, and it is absolutely stunningly gorgeous there. It's verdant and green and just rolling hills. And whilst I was there visiting last spring, a year ago, I we were hiking through one of the peaks, and they took me specifically to what's called Nine Ladies Stone Circle. And it was just this stone circle literally in the middle of nowhere. No signage or of how to get there. No parking, nothing like you would consider if it was a historical site in the States. To make this long story short, I don't think I realized it at the time, but there are so many stone circles spotted throughout Great Britain, everywhere. There's over 1,300. And many of them are on land that was previously or still is privately owned. So it hasn't been until very recently that England passed some laws in the early 2000s that called right to roam is what people call it, which basically gives everyone in the country access to any lake, hill, moor, land, anything that might be under private ownership but is actually part of the country, and that includes stone circles. So you have stone circles everywhere. There's, I think, 300 and some in England alone. And they're not signposted. Like I said, there's no real way to find them. You have to put in coordinates, map coordinates to find them. So the bottom line is you can now access any of these anyone can access any of them, where they previously were not accessible because it was on land of private landowners. Something happened when I went there, and I got so energized and so happy, and I could feel so much energy coming from these, and I could think, oh my gosh, I got to get back here. I told my kids I'm coming back. I want to go to more of these. I did indeed go to more. About 2 weeks before I went the second time, though, I got clear messages from my spirit guides, and I have a Lemurian teacher that I work with. And the message was, I needed to visit these stone circles, and I need to be doing something in there. Send some healing, some light, something. Again, through serendipitous timing, I had 2 people in my life that were able to help me figure out what I needed to do. And the bottom line is, I am going in, and I don't want to say activate because that's not the correct word, but I'm opening up these dormant energy centers that haven't been used for a long time. But now and here is the time that they need to be put back into use and active. And I think it has a lot to do with how the earth is changing, a lot to do with how the people on earth are changing, which are 2 separate entities there. So my goal was to go and get these things working again, dust them off, clean them out, get rid of entities, get rid of bad energy, put some light and love in them. I was gifted a beautiful piece of sacred geometry. I had gone into the Akasha with Vera, and she had called me and said, Tamara, we've got to go in before you go to the stone circles. We've got something we got to hear, or protection or something. We went in, given sacred geometry, and the mandate was, use this once you clear out the energies and place the sacred geometry in them. So that's what I did. The details of what happened are incredible. I won't go over through them now, but it was humbling. It was joyful. It was exciting. It was everything I could even imagine. I'm going back to Scotland and Ireland in a couple of months, and that is what my journey's about, is doing this again. I think these are places now where we're connecting the new earth with the old earth. These energy sites, these stone circles, these ancient ruins, these are all places where the new earth and the old earth are going to join together and mesh. And I am so excited. I don't know if I'm the only one doing this. I have no idea. I would imagine there's others doing something similar to me, but it is an incredibly important thing. And the fact that I feel so strongly about it tells me how important it is. And I'm just lucky to be able to do it.
Yeah, it's so wonderful. I'm so excited to hear more. I wish we could dedicate an entire episode to it, frankly.
Yeah, I would definitely do that. I make recordings when I'm there of every being I see, every energy I get. Some are portals that go up to the universe. Some are portals that go down to the earth. We could do a whole episode on that. It's exciting, okay. And I'll have a lot more to say when I get back from Great Britain again.
That's amazing. Well, Tamara, I want to say thank you so much. I'm so grateful for not only your friendship, but the time that you took to share information with our audience. And you are just incredible to me.
Well, thank you very much. It was so much fun to be here, and always a good time to spend with you.
Bye. Thanks, Tamara.
Goodbye.
Thanks so much for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's conversation as much as we did. Be sure to subscribe and follow us wherever you get your podcasts so that you never miss a new episode. If you liked today's episode, please consider leaving a review to help the other psychics find their way here.